Okay, hello everybody. Start broadcast. This, I'm hoping, because, hello everyone, hello. Hi, Jean here with Waldorf-Inspired Learning, and I am so glad to be here and to welcome you to April's At Home with Waldorf. So today we're going to be talking about all things curriculum, and what I would love to know is if you can see and hear me. If you were here before I started, and you can't see and hear me yet, you might need to refresh your screen. And once you do that, if you could let me know in the chat box that you can see and hear me, that would be really helpful. It's always good to do a little tech check and know that things are working as they should. So if you could let me know that, that would be really great. And I know we'll be joined by a few more people shortly. I'm going to just check on my other screen here, if I can, that things are working here. So, live and clear, beautiful. All right, great. So I'm going to go ahead and get things set up completely here. My chat screen is not working exactly as it should. But I'm glad that those of you who are here, welcome, welcome. I'm glad that you can see me and hear me. So it's April here in Cleveland, and the sun is out today, and finally the snow is melting. So I'm super excited about that. Springtime is always really beautiful here. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes while people join us and get a chance to catch up. So what I would like to ask you to do is say hello in the chat box if you haven't already. I see a couple of you that I've welcomed, and I'm just going to start off by saying that I have a variety of experience with curriculum, and so today's topic is a huge favorite of mine. I studied curriculum and curriculum design in graduate school, and I've edited curriculum, I've written curriculum, and then I've homeschooled all three of my children using the Waldorf curriculum. So I'm really, really excited to talk about this with you today. So, oh good, hi Tara and Ginny and Jenny, hi Jenny, and Manuela, thank you all for being here. Welcome to At Home with Waldorf. If you haven't had a chance to, there is a page on my website so you can watch some of the past episodes of this, but I do this event, this free webinar, generally the first Tuesday of every month. This month, because of tech issues, I had to switch, postpone to this week, but I do this generally the first Tuesday of every month, and we take a deep dive into a different topic. And like I said, the topic this month is curriculum, all things curriculum. And specifically, the question that I like to ask is, what is curriculum? And it is not just something we buy. So that's going to be our conversation today, and I'm looking forward to engaging in that with all of you. So here we go. It's the top of the hour, and I just would like to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Jean, and I'm the founder of Waldorf-Inspired Learning. And I just love sharing with homeschoolers all over the world now at this point about Waldorf lessons the main lesson, the working with main lessons in our homeschooling, and the lively arts, weaving the lively arts in. So, so like I said, today we're going to talk about all things curriculum, and I'm going to share a little bit about what Rudolf Steiner said about curriculum and some of my own experience with curriculum, and I'm hoping that you'll jump into the conversation. So, I can't wait to get started. I just have a couple of tips first, and the first is that I would love for you to say hello in the chat box, because it's really fun to hear where everybody's from. And it really always amazes me that we have this technology now where we can all from everywhere, all over the world, talk to each other like this. So we have Manuela from Pennsylvania, Anastasia from New York, and those of you, if everybody would put where you're from, type your name and where you're from in the chat, that's also your way of entering the giveaway. So later on in the webinar, I'm going to be giving away one of my planning guides. Looks like this. You'll get the ebook version, but it gives a bunch of tips about planning using the Waldorf curriculum. And then in the back, there are these one-page grids where I list all my favorite resources for all the different blocks, main lesson blocks. So the way you enter the giveaway is by putting your name and where you're from in the chat box. And we'll do a drawing at the end of the webinar today. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already. The usual rhythm of these webinars is that we do this little bit of meet and greet, and then I get started with the topic and just jump right in. And I'm going to share slides for that portion of it, slides that I've created for you today. And then I'll share some verses and songs that you can use right away in your homeschooling. And then we'll have a Q&A. And then I have a few updates for you from Waldorf-Inspired Learning that I want to tell you about. And then we'll do the giveaway and close with a quote by Rudolf Steiner. So that's the plan. All of that in an hour. I do my best. I've been pretty good about it. So yeah, so I do pack a lot into these webinars. So if you haven't been to one before, there's a lot of information that I share. So it would be great. You might want to have a pen and paper handy. You're welcome to ask questions as we go along. But it's also, if I don't get to your question, I might ask you to put it in the chat box again during the Q&A portion, because then it's much more likely that I'm going to see your question, because sometimes I get going on subjects that I love. Okay, so hello to Ginny is from Michigan, Tara, Arizona, Susan from Colorado. Hi, to have you all here. Just a couple of things. I want you to know that you're in the right place today if you have children in any of the grades and are working with the Waldorf curriculum at home. This presentation is geared toward all grades. It isn't any particular grade. You can use this information no matter what age your children are or what grade you might be working with. You're also in the right place if you have a curriculum already, but you aren't quite sure what to do, or you want to tweak it to suit your family better. And I'm going to help you today, I hope, to feel less stress and more ease in your homeschooling days by helping you think just maybe a little bit differently about curriculum, and give you a clear picture of what curriculum is and what it isn't, so that you can gain some confidence in the way you work with your children. Okay, so we have a few more people joining us. So if you are just arriving, please type your name and where you're from in the chat box. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so that we can get started with the slides. So here we go. Let's see. Share. All right. So here are my slides, and I'm just going to double check what the screen looks like so that I can make sure that you can see them. Slides. So if you could tell me that you can see them, that would be really great. If you can tell me that in the chat, that would be helpful. So here we go. Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide there, though. All right, this is the April At Home with Waldorf. And like I said, our topic today is what is curriculum? It's not just something you buy. So we're going to dive into all things curriculum today. I just want to share a picture. I love to start off with a picture of my family. And here are my 3 kiddos just this past weekend. My oldest lives in Colorado, but he's here for work, and it's just so exciting. We had everybody here at our house over the weekend, so super excited about that. And there they are. So sweet. It does go really quickly, I have to tell you. It goes too quickly. So Waldorf wisdom for this month is what is curriculum? This little picture that you see on the side is an image of what I have done every year is to block out, draw on a large, this is called the planning on the large paper. So I would block out every month and write in what, I'd write in the holidays and days that, birthdays and things like that, days that we might not be doing main lessons, and then write in which main lesson block topics we would be covering each month. So that's kind of how I keep on track with my curriculum. And just to ensure that you have a great experience today with this whole thing, make sure that you have a strong internet connection. If you've had issues before, it can really help to get something called an Ethernet cord that connects your computer to your router. It also helps to close other tabs, to close out tabs on your computer. And if necessary, you can always try refreshing your screen if you're having issues. And I want to invite you to participate with us in the chat. All right, so let's get started. What is curriculum? It is not something you buy, and I want to share with you, to start out, to share with you this dictionary definition of curriculum, which is a fixed course of study or all the courses collectively offered in a school or in a particular subject. So I'd love to hear in the chat box, what is your definition of curriculum? Because I'm thinking that it may change by the time we get to the end of the webinar here today. So yeah, so Lindsay has a question just about seeing the screen. That's really strange that your screen says final thoughts. So I'm hoping, I think that if you refresh your screen, Lindsay and Christina, and Jenny, okay, that's a problem. Is anybody seeing the screen that says what is curriculum? Because if you're not, I might have to stop this screen share and start it again. Okay, you tried that. Okay, I'm going to stop this and I will come back on screen and then I'm going to start it again and see if that works. Okay, here I am. And now I'm going to go to the screen share. Why won't it let me? There we go. And that is strange. Okay, give me just a second. Close that out and start all over. Okay, yeah, you can see me, and in just a second, I'm hoping that you can see the screen, the slides. Okay. All right. Hi, Vana. So glad to see you here. Okay, so I'm now going to share this screen and hope that you can see. So now you should be seeing the very first slide that says At Home with Waldorf. So if somebody could let me know if that is what you're seeing, that would be superb. And I'm going to jump ahead to what is curriculum. So if you can see the screen that says what is curriculum, let me know. Yay, we did it. Okay, good. All right, so so my question, yeah, and Ginny answered this. My question for you is, what are your definitions of curriculum, and has that changed over the years? So go ahead and type something into the chat box that you think describes your definition of curriculum. Ginny says it's a guide to help you make sure you cover everything. That's a great point. To cover everything that you want your children to know. Okay, very interesting. So anybody else want to type into the chat what you think curriculum is? That would be really, really helpful. And we're going to explore different ways of looking at curriculum today that I think are going to be really helpful to open up your view, really, of what curriculum is. So, yeah, so Amanda says the tools that I use, curriculum is the tools that I use to move through the development of the broader educational goals that I have for my students. Okay, great. That's great. So we're going to explore today what curriculum actually is in terms of that broader picture, right? Not necessarily the specifics that you need your students to know, but it's actually a whole series of events that starts with what we actually plan and ends with what the student learns. So let's start with the concept that a whole lot of people think curriculum is, you know, what we buy, right? The published resources that we buy. So a lot of people, when we as homeschoolers, so often our conversation goes something like, oh, I'm a homeschooler. Oh, so am I. What curriculum do you use? And really the concept of learning is the curriculum we use to bring about that learning is much, much bigger than that, and is a lot more elusive and harder to nail down. It's really what happens between the teacher and the learner, but it's hard to nail down exactly what that is. So the published resources are there to help guide the learning, but the actual learning is the end that we are seeking, right? Okay, so yeah, so plans for each stage, a guide, very good, a map, I like that. So here's a definition of curriculum or a description of curriculum that comes from the Steiner Waldorf Schools Fellowship, which is the organization governing Waldorf education in the UK and Ireland. Here is a definition that I want to just share with you. The priority of the Steiner ethos is to provide an unhurried and creative learning environment where children can find the joy in learning and experience the richness, experience the richness of childhood rather than early specialization or academic hothousing. And here's the part that I really want to emphasize. The curriculum itself is a flexible set of pedagogical guidelines founded on Steiner's principles that take account of the whole child. So it goes on to say it gives equal attention to physical, emotional, intellectual, cultural, and spiritual needs. So it's, I think, really, really critical for us to think of this phrase. I love this phrase. The curriculum itself is a flexible set of pedagogical guidelines founded on Steiner's principles that take account of the whole child. And the flexible piece, I think, is really, really important. These principles are often seen to us like a very fixed set of rules that we need to follow. All right, so now you're seeing the first screen. Wow, technology is amazing and also can be very challenging. So is everybody seeing just the first screen? If you are, I'm going to have to do what I did before, which is to log out and log back in. Yes, you're all just seeing the first screen. Okay, that's so strange, but these things happen sometimes. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing again. And we'll give this one more try. Close that. Hi. Open this. Technology is beautiful and sometimes a little crazy. Okay, so screen share. Please bear with me a moment. We're getting there, hopefully. Okay, share the screen. I'm glad you can hear me. That's a really good start. And now I'm going to fast forward here through the first few slides, and hopefully this is moving forward. So my question for you is, can you see this slide? How is the curriculum, the Waldorf curriculum, defined? And Megan, I'm glad you made it back. Yay! So if you can see the slide that says, how is the curriculum defined, that would be super helpful for me to know. That worked. Yippee. So what I want to emphasize, like I said, is the term flexible, because I think we often perceive the Waldorf curriculum as very fixed. And it is not so fixed. It is actually a very flexible set of guidelines for us to follow. So here we go. No, we're not seeing those. All right, well, I'm going to come back on screen then and just talk through these slides since they are not working properly today. And sometimes that happens with Google Hangouts. So isn't it great that we're talking about flexibility here? It's important. Flexibility is important. So here's what I'm going to do. I just need to get the slides up on my other screen so that I can talk to you about them while I'm doing this. Okay. All right. Here we go. So, like I said, we're focusing on flexibility here. I think that's just quite a great concept to touch on. So the next thing that I want to share with you is that there are really three. So the question then becomes, what are the pedagogical guidelines of Waldorf education? And here are three really important guidelines. Very simple. The first is that this curriculum is based on the principles of child development. So you've probably heard of the phrase thinking, feeling, and willing. And each of those human activities are really focused on at different stages of child development. So the young child is a child of will, and they're always doing. And then the middle ages 7 through 14, a child is doing a lot of feeling, right? They connect in feeling way to stories and activities. And then once children are over age 14, it's the thinking that kicks in. So the first pedagogical guideline of Waldorf education is that it's based on child development, on specific stages of child development. The second major guideline is this concept of rhythm, and the idea that children learn in blocks, and we alternate between active and calm activities. That's the concept of rhythm. And the third guideline is that we're using the lively arts to do the teaching, or to help with the teaching. So we want to weave the lively arts into all of the lessons. So those are the three main principles, right? The pedagogical guidelines. And like I said, there is definitely flexibility here. So I recently wrote a post about this, a blog post about this, that I will reference and include a link below the recording of this, about what is curriculum. And I think that truthfully, curriculum is that there are more ways to look at it than we originally think. It's a much bigger conversation than that initial conversation that I was describing about, oh, what curriculum do you use? It's a much bigger conversation than that. So, okay, so I'm hoping some of you can see and hear me. I'm getting a message that some people cannot see and hear me. So let me go back to this other screen and make sure. Yeah, it says that I'm still live. So I'm going to keep going. And if you're having tech issues, you can always come back and watch the recording. If you can't see and hear me, you won't be able to hear me say that. Okay, so here are three pieces of the curriculum that I want you to think about today. The first step to delivering curriculum is what the teacher plans, right? So a teacher has a plan. It's usually what we write down on paper, and that's some of the things that people mentioned in the beginning. That it's that plan that guides us through the lessons. But that's only really the first piece of it. The second piece of curriculum is what that teacher actually does. So it's how we deliver the curriculum. And it isn't always as planned. So we all know that, right? We have all had that experience where we planned something and then it turns out quite differently than we had planned, or something wonderful happens and we go with that. So again, the word flexibility, we want to be able to have some flexibility in our teaching. And then the third piece of the curriculum is the learned curriculum, which is what the student is actually learning from the lessons or the experiences that we're providing. And that piece of it is a piece that we often forget about because it's so elusive. It's very hard to measure, even though educators have tried for years. But it's a very elusive thing. It's hard for us to know exactly what's landing, right, with the student and what they're getting from what it is that we're bringing to them. So the most important point I want to make about these three stages that I'll just say one more time are there's the planned or intended curriculum. That's what the teacher plans to do. There's the taught curriculum. That's what actually happens. And then there's the learned curriculum, which is what the student gets from the lesson or the experience. And one really important thing to keep in mind is that there are gaps in between each of these steps. There are gaps between what the teacher plans and the teacher carries out, and there are gaps between what the teacher carries out and what the student learns. So I may prepare one thing, carry out something different, and the student might take away something completely different from that. So the question becomes, what does this mean, right, for us as homeschoolers? And I think the very first place that we need to be paying attention is to be aware of the gaps. So as soon as we're aware that those gaps are happening, we can work to minimize those gaps, but we can also know that we'll never be able to eliminate the gaps altogether. And really, the gaps are okay. The gaps are, in fact, what you could think of the gaps as where the learning happens. Learners, all of us, including adult learners, really need to struggle sometimes to be able to learn something new. And that feeling of struggle can be uncomfortable. That feeling of not knowing or not understanding something at first can be uncomfortable. But the truth is that there's a creative tension involved in learning something new. And that's a good thing. So I often say to people, our job is to stretch our children's thinking, but not frustrate them. And it's really a tricky thing, and it can be different from day to day. One day it could be that we can push a little bit harder, and on another day that pushing can cause a huge meltdown and is not at all effective. So how can we work with the gaps? We want to first acknowledge them, like I said, and be aware that they're there. And the second piece of it, I think, is to know that we can't control the outcome. That third piece, which is the final leg of the journey, really, of what the student learns, is beyond our control. I have a little note that sits beside my computer that says, the outcome is not my responsibility. So we do have a huge responsibility for planning and carrying out lessons to the best of our ability. But what our students take from them is really beyond our control. So I like to think of it this way. I like to visualize offering my teaching up to the gap, what I call the gap, and release my teaching sort of out into this gap, into the space between me and the student. Release my teaching into the space between us, and then trust that our children are going to get what they need from exactly what they need from what it is that we bring to them. So we need to trust the process. It's definitely a leap of faith. And it's interesting because when I was thinking about preparing this talk, I was thinking really that's why I chose the name Waldorf-Inspired Learning for my business, because I wanted to emphasize and acknowledge that it's the learning that's the end piece, right? It's not just the teaching, it's what our children take from that teaching that we want to try to be thinking about and to observe and be aware of. Not try to control, like I said, but just know that this is a fluid process. It is not fixed by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. It is not fixed. So here's a quote. So I want to get into what exactly did Rudolf Steiner say about curriculum. So a couple things that I want you to know, if you don't know already, are that, first of all, Rudolf Steiner started the first Waldorf school in 1919, so it's almost 100 years ago now. And it was in Germany, right? In Germany, almost 100 years ago. And he never wrote down a curriculum. So what we know about the Waldorf curriculum is really what we've learned from, what we can pick up from his lectures. And his lectures, we can read little bits and pieces of comments that he made, but there's no one single place where we can read everything that there is to read about the Waldorf curriculum. So I'm going to share with you some things that he said about curriculum and some things other people have said too, that I just think are really important to know. So here is a quote from Johannes Tautz about in a book called The Founding of the First Waldorf School in Stuttgart. So here's the quote. "The curriculum is the human being. The child beholds himself in the curriculum and finds the answers for his inner developmental needs through the content of the lessons we deliver." So think about that the curriculum is the human being, and the child will get, what they need developmentally, they are going to get from the lessons that we provide. I also will give a link to a recent blog post that I did over at the Steiner Cafe. So the Steiner Cafe is a place where my homeschooling friend Allison and I are reflecting on the lectures by Rudolf Steiner, the lectures that he gave to those very first Waldorf teachers. I love to talk about that. If you've been here before, you've heard me say before that Steiner gave lectures for 2 weeks leading up to, in August of 1919, leading up to the opening of the first school, and then they opened the doors. So they had to be flexible, right? They were in a whole new learning experience and in learning environment, and so the lectures are one of the places, the lectures to the first teachers are one of the places where we can get little snippets of what Steiner said about the curriculum. And here is something from the recent blog post I'm referencing was called "What to Consider When Creating Waldorf Curriculum." And it's from lecture 11 from the book, The Foundations of Human Experience. And here are a couple things that Steiner said that I find just fascinating. So you may have heard this phrase before. He said to teach the children before us. So we want to observe the children before us and create a curriculum that they need. So that's the goal. And that's why I think it's important to associate the word flexibility with the Waldorf curriculum, because what we see as the Waldorf curriculum is what's carried out in most Waldorf schools these days, but it isn't fixed, like I said. So our job is to take this curriculum outline or these guidelines that I mentioned and mold them into something that suits our own family and our particular children. So I will reiterate the idea that the curriculum is tied to child development. That's something that Steiner mentions quite often. And then here's a quote that I absolutely love that's about the different stages of development that are, I think, really important for us to consider when we're delivering this curriculum. So here's a quote again. Through the milk, and he's talking about the mother's milk, he says that a mother's milk is very important for the first stage of childhood. Through the milk, the genius of nature raises the child at the beginning of life. In the same way, after the change of teeth, we raise children slowly by feeding them with art during the elementary school. As children near the end of elementary school, another change occurs. Their independent judgment, their own feelings of personality, and their desires for independence will slowly sparkle in. We consider this when we form the curriculum. And I will say, as a parent of a 26, 24, and 17-year-old, that this really happens. And it's amazing when it happens, that there is a sparkle, that their independence, their sense of who they are, and their desire to learn and pursue things really does bubble up and sparkle, come to the surface. Okay, so with that being said, we now have a little bit of background about what Steiner said is about the curriculum. And remember the fact that I pointed out that he never actually wrote down a curriculum. One of the things that I have also in another one of the blog posts at the Steiner Cafe is one version of the curriculum is this list written on a chalkboard. And he wrote the numbers 1 through 8 for grades 1 through 8. And he wrote one thing next to each of them. So 1 says fairy tales, 2 says animal fables, and that's the simplest outline of the curriculum that we have. And really, it's like the story curriculum. It's the types of stories that we want to share at each grade level for our children. And so you could create a whole year's curriculum out of that outline, and that would be a Waldorf curriculum. So that's another interesting way to look at it. So the point I want to make now is that no matter how much we wish this existed, there really is no such thing as open and go. So people so often will contact me and say, okay, just tell me which curriculum I should buy that's just open and go, that I can open it up, read what I'm supposed to do each day, and then I do it. And there just isn't any such thing. Even if you aren't a Waldorf homeschooler, there's no such thing. There isn't such a thing as a teacher. It just doesn't exist. It's only in our fantasy. So a packaged curriculum is meant as a guide, as has been mentioned a few times here. And we want to be sure that we use it as such. But don't fool yourself into thinking that your work is done as soon as you choose your curriculum, because that's really only the beginning. That's really only the first step. You could choose your own curriculum. You can choose to buy a packaged curriculum, or you can choose to create your own. But either way, that's just the starting point. I will also say that no teacher anywhere on the face of the planet, even classroom teachers I'm talking about now, ever, no matter how well they're trained, no teacher ever finishes the curriculum. So that concept of open and go, that you're going to use it exactly as it's written, it's just not, it's like I said, it's just a fantasy. It doesn't exist. And another important thing about packaged curriculum is that we usually only use a very small portion of it. I just want to share briefly from my own experience that I've taught in a setting where I was in a public school and I had a full curriculum binder that I was supposed to follow. And I've taught in a small private school where there was no written curriculum and I was able to create it on my own. And the truth of the matter is that my teaching was not all that different in those two settings, right? I would look at the children and see what they needed and think about what I thought would be exciting for them to engage in terms of learning, and do that. So that's what we need to do. We need to think about what the students need, look at them, observe them, what do they need, and teach that. And that's really the most important curriculum that we could be bringing them, delivering to them. So how do we go about planning this? And like I said, you could buy a packaged curriculum or you could create it yourself. Either way, it almost doesn't matter. I do think is important, especially for people who are new to Waldorf education, because there's so many pieces and parts to it. It is important to be realistic in the fact that if you purchase a packaged curriculum, you aren't going to use all of it because it isn't possible. Even as a curriculum writer, people put in lots of possibilities so that you can choose which ones you want to use. So they're not intended to be used 100% as is either. So whatever curriculum you have as your starting point, it still needs to be crafted to your own children and your own family. So how do we do that? We start with the blocks. It is good, I think, to look at the recommended blocks. I think that's the best starting point because my experience always has been that the stories, the story curriculum is so developmentally spot on. It always surprises me. And so we want to see what blocks are suggested per grade. I have a list of that on my website. If you want to take a look at that, it's under free resources. And then we want to go from there. And a block can be built around, it can be built around a favorite book. It can also be built around a favorite topic, right? And I just want to reiterate here then that it's the most important piece of this is that to remember that the written curriculum, the written plan is a set of flexible pedagogical guidelines, flexible guidelines for us to follow. Okay, so in planning your curriculum, I want to suggest that I have this mantra, think in threes, pick one. So I like to tell people to think about 3 resources that might be helpful to you, and then pick just one to start with. Because really, the more curriculum you buy, the more resources you have on your shelf, the more confusing homeschooling gets. It just becomes more and more confusing when you could refer to this or check that. It's really sometimes fewer resources is better. And the truth is that a few good resources is really all that we need. So here are my 3 suggestions for you if you were going to follow the mantra of think in threes, pick one. And the very first one, this one's falling apart, is to get the Path of Discovery by Eric Fairman. And this comes grade by grade. He was an Australian Waldorf teacher, and these are his notes. So there's a grade 1, a grade 2, grade, et cetera, all the way up. And they're his notes. So for each block, he has suggested lesson ideas, activities, and things to do. He includes some articles about child development. And then in the back, there are verses, poems, etc., that you can use for the different blocks. So that's the first thing, a path of discovery. The second is Creative Pathways, which is a book. So I'm not looking at, let me just go here. Yeah. So this is a book by Elizabeth Auer that has activities for each grade level for the different blocks. And most of the drawings are in black and white, but she gives ideas for making dioramas, for doing form drawing, for making a main lesson book. For every single grade, there are a handful of ideas, and it's super, super helpful. So if you have these 2 books, Eric Fairman and Path of Discovery, and then my third suggestion is my own book. This book that is the giveaway today, Planning for Waldorf-Inspired Learning or Waldorf-Inspired Homeschooling. You will then have tips from an experienced homeschooler, as well as lists. It lists at the back of the book all my favorite resources for every single block. So with those 3 resources, you can be on your way. And like I said, pick one of those to start with, and you're all set for planning your own curriculum. So here's DIY Waldorf curriculum in 3 easy steps. The first step is to pick your main lesson blocks, like I said, so you can lay out a block per month is often a simple way to do it. The second step is to choose your stories. And then the third step is to weave in the lively arts. And I have an article, if you haven't read it yet, it's a pretty in-depth article called The 7 Lively Arts on my website for free. And it really helps break down all those different arts, and as well as give suggestions for ways to incorporate the arts into your lessons. So that's it, really, 3 steps. Pick your main lesson blocks, choose your stories, weave in the arts. Make a plan for that, and you've got a Waldorf curriculum. So let's see, one more quote I want to give you from Steiner. So now I want to move into this concept that Steiner brought up about how important who we are as teachers is to this process. So remember what I said about, that there's what the teacher plans, there's what the teacher does, and then there's what the learner receives or takes in. So obviously, the very first two parts have to do with the teacher, us. And here's a quote from Rudolf Steiner that I want you to take in. We will not be good teachers if we focus on what we do and not on who we are. And I just love this because it really, it can be daunting and a little bit scary, but really it's just as important for us to be, and this is where the concept of inner work comes in, but it's just as important for us to be working on ourselves as it is for us to be figuring out what to do with our kids. So that can take lots of different forms. Steiner talks about the importance of teaching as spiritual work. So the work we're doing is spiritual work, and that as teachers, we want to strive to build up in ourselves what he calls a meditative consciousness, so that we can acquire the intuition, the inspiration, and the imagination for the work that we need to do. And I think those three words, all beginning with I, are really great to keep in mind. Intuition, inspiration, and imagination. That's what we want to bring to the situation every day. So whatever it is that we need to do to take care of ourselves, so that we can do that, that is just as important as the actual plan or the curriculum. Now, one more quote that I want to give you. I love this quote. Alan Whitehead, who is the author of the Spiritual Syllabus series of books, he says this in he wrote a book called A Steiner Homeschool, ? He says, the following is the most important sentence for supporting self-esteem in the homeschooler in this whole book. Capital letters, you are already a trained teacher. You are already a trained teacher. From the moment you were born, you began learning about the world. So I think that's a really great thing for us to remember about teaching and learning. So how do we strengthen our own relationship to the curriculum, I think, is a question. And a sort of question embedded in that is, how can I develop my intuition, imagination, and inspiration so that I have the confidence to teach my children and work with them? And I think the answer is, like I said, that we want to find what works for us spiritually as well as in a meditative way. So Steiner's answer really is meditation and prayer. But the questions are, how can I hone my skills of observation? What small steps can I take to build up the curriculum, build up myself so that I can deliver the curriculum that my children need? So here we are. I just have a few final thoughts on curriculum, and then I want to share some verses and songs for you for this time of year. So here are my final thoughts on curriculum. We want to understand the curriculum, and if you take anything away with you today, what I would encourage you to take away is that idea of a flexible set of pedagogical guidelines. That's the definition I'm hoping that you will take away with you when you think about curriculum. It's a flexible set of guidelines. And then the second piece is to understand child development from this perspective that Rudolf Steiner talked about, that children, between 0 and 7 have a certain way of learning, between 7 and 14, and then 14 and up. And to find ways, like I said, to strengthen your inspiration, imagination, and intuition. deep inside of you, because that's what's going to help bring the curriculum alive and guide you in this really important work that we're all doing. So let me give you some verses and songs for the month of April. I can get this up. Okay. The first one is this verse called April Time. It's by a poem by Alice Carey, and it goes like this. The wild and windy March once more has shut his gates of sleet and given back the April time so fickle and so sweet. It's so apropos to Cleveland because we've had this back and forth between sleety rain and snow and then sunshine and flowers. So April time. And for those of you who haven't been here before, what I do is I'll include a link so that you have a document that has all of these verses and songs on it. And here is another poem called Hurt No Living Thing by Christina Rossetti. Hurt no living thing, ladybird, nor butterfly, nor moth with dusty wing, nor cricket chirping cheerily, nor grasshopper so light of leap, nor dancing gnat, nor beetle fat, nor harmless worms that creep. Okay, and I have one song that I'm going to share with you. Sorry about the audio cutting in and out. I'll try to be still. Sometimes that really helps if I'm still. I want to sing you a song called Pussy Willow. If you've never heard this before, it's a song that goes up and down the scale. I know a pussy willow whose coat is furry gray. She lives down in the meadow, not very far away. She'll always be a pussy, she'll never be a cat, for she's a pussy willow. Now what do you think of that? Meow, 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 scat. That's a really fun one. You can clap on that last word, scat. Okay, so I'm going to open things up for Q&A now. And I'm hoping that if you have any questions, you type them into the chat box. I'm hoping that I've given you a more complete view of the Waldorf curriculum or the concept of curriculum that you can use in your homeschooling and in the work that you do at home with your children. I just want to say before I jump into the Q&A that this would be a good time if you haven't already typed your name and where you're from into the chat box. This would be a good time to do that because we're going to have the giveaway soon. So please include your name and where you're from in the chat so that you can be entered into the giveaway. And the giveaway this month is my planning guide. So one of you is going to get a copy of my planning for Waldorf-Inspired Homeschooling. Okay, so Vanna is asking the question, I currently use the Christophorus curriculum, but I am flexible with it and use other resources of my choosing as well, but not sure I yet feel comfortable coming up with a plan or curriculum myself. When did you feel comfortable doing that, and is it less expensive than buying the curriculum? So that's a really good question. I did start doing that, I would say probably really from the beginning. Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. The Christophorus curriculum, which I very much like and I think is wonderful, the Christophorus curriculum I was out of sync with. So my kids were a year older than when those were published, so it didn't exist. And very little curriculum actually existed at that point when I was beginning. There was the Oak Meadow curriculum. It is not strictly Waldorf, as many of you have heard. So I had to put together main lesson blocks a lot on my own in the beginning. So I would say most people, when they're new, feel like the very first year, feel most comfortable purchasing a curriculum. But by the end of the first year or into the second or third year, for sure, feel comfortable creating their own. Yes, it is less expensive if you don't turn into a resource hoarder. That's not a very pleasant word, I know. I should use a better word, because I've been one of them myself. So if you don't try to collect every possible resource that you could use for a particular topic or block, then it is less expensive. But oftentimes when you purchase a curriculum, you have to buy, in addition, the books that have the stories in them to go with it. So it depends, really, I think. I think the very best way is to create your own curriculum and there are so many wonderful books at the library that you can use. You can create, you find a favorite storybook. For example, the Dolaire's Norse Myths book. You can do your whole Norse Myths block using just that one book. So you could, I recommend that to people. Pick one book that is the source of your stories per block. And if you have a really good one, that's all you need. So that's the answer to that question. All right. Tara is asking, since I have 6 children, do I teach one block for each individual child, or do one block for all my children? Great question. Tara, if you haven't had a chance, I suggest, last month I did a webinar. The topic was Waldorf homeschooling with multiple ages. So my most often cited advice for that is, just from personal experience, I don't have more than 2 main lessons a day in me. So if you have more than 2 children, you need to find a way of combining some of them or all of them, or alternating days. So I can't even sustain doing 2 separate main lesson blocks a day all year long. So I like sometimes having a month where we're all doing a block together. And that could be in May, you're doing a gardening block. It could be your trees, the botany block that's often done in 5th grade, you could be doing for everybody, and they're just all doing it at a different level. And the 5th grader and those older than 5th grade are the ones who are doing the more in-depth study of the plants. So yes, definitely finding ways of combining blocks. Look for similarities in the blocks. You can also prioritize which of your children's sort of the block outline plan for which child you're going to focus on which month. So maybe in September, it's your 6th grader, and you're going to pick a block just for them, and then the other children are going to be doing something related to it. And then in November, you're going to pick a block that is directly suited for the 4th grader or something like that. Yeah, so like Tara, Jenny wants to know, how do you plan your blocks for more than one student at different stages? It's a tricky thing to do. And I mentioned, go back and listen to the one last month. I'll just say quickly here that often what I would do is have the story be the same, like everybody's hearing the same story, but then what they do with it is different. So maybe not everybody's making a main lesson book. Maybe only like if it were the 5th grade, if it were that botany block, maybe the 5th grader is the only one who's actually making the main lesson, but everybody hears the stories and everybody still goes out on the nature walk and observes the plants. So yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do that, and it's very, very tricky. It's something that you have to be willing to experiment with and find what works for you and for your family. And just like in parenting, it's going to change. So what's working well you know, 1 month is then maybe going to change because our children grow and change all the time. So we have to be flexible. There you have it. Yeah, so let me know if you have any other questions. I think for the mixed ages, the best thing to do is to pick a topic or a book, like I said, and build your block around that, and then have them doing different work with the material. I hope that makes sense. If you have a further question about that, please type it in. And I am going to go ahead and get to the, wait, I have to log out of here. I want to go ahead and get to the giveaway. So if you haven't typed your name into the chat box, please do that now. And I'm going to summon my giveawayer, that's not a word, I know, to bring me the, who is our winner today. So with that done, while we're waiting on that, I'm going to give you just a couple of updates from Waldorf-Inspired Learning. And I'm sorry that I can't show you my slides because I was excited about this. But even if you don't win the giveaway today, you do get a discount. So what I want to offer you, here's the discount code. The coupon code is DIY curriculum, all one word. And it's for my planning guide. It's for 20% off the planning guide. So you can go to waldorfinspiredlearning.com/planning for Waldorf homeschooling with dashes between each of them, or just click at the top guidebooks and you'll find it. And when you purchase the planning guide, you get 20% off. So it's 22 instead of 27. Okay, and that discount code, again, is DIY curriculum, all one word, no spaces, all lowercase. And the one other thing that I want to tell you about right now is that the registration, I'm super excited about this, registration for the Taproot teacher training has opened, just opened last week. And for those who don't know about this, this will be the 10th annual Taproot teacher training, hard to believe, that takes place here in Ohio every August. The dates for next summer are August 11th through the 14th. It's a long weekend. We gather together, and it's a training in all areas of Waldorf homeschooling. So there's painting and drawing and eurythmy and handwork and all kinds of things that we engage in together. So it's very hands-on. And there are lessons about the main lesson blocks themselves. And there's conversation about how to combine them. We could have nature walks and all kinds of interesting and fun activities. And it takes place in Ohio's National Park. We have a national park here in Ohio, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and it's in Peninsula. And you can go to my website, again, waldorfinspiredlearning.com/Taproot teacher training 2016, and find more info about that. And lastly, before I tell you the giveaway winner, you can connect with me in a variety of places. On Pinterest, I'm Waldorf Inspired. On Facebook, Waldorf Inspired Learning. YouTube, Waldorf Inspired Learning. And you can also email me, Jean at Waldorf Inspired Learning, if you want to be in touch. Okay, so our giveaway winner is, and then I'm going to tell you the quote from Rudolf Steiner. Our giveaway winner today for this planning for Waldorf-inspired homeschooling is Anastasia from New York. So congratulations, Anastasia. Thanks for being here today. And if you email me, Jean at Waldorf-Inspired Learning, then I can send you the planning guide. So super excited about that. Thank you. And I'm going to end with this quote from Rudolf Steiner. that is one of my all-time favorite quotes. The aim of Waldorf education is to arrange all of the teaching so that within the shortest possible time, the maximum amount of material can be presented to the students by the simplest possible means. I'm going to read that again. The aim of Waldorf education is to arrange all of the teaching so that within the shortest possible time, the maximum amount of material can be presented to the students by the simplest possible means. That's Rudolf Steiner. So there you have it. Thanks for joining me today for this conversation about curriculum. And next month, Tuesday, May 3rd at 4 p.m. Once again, I'll be talking about wrapping up your homeschool year. So I hope you can join me for that. And thank you for being here. And congratulations to Anastasia, who won the planning guide. So thanks a lot, everybody. See you next time. Bye.